I want you to imagine now, as we start going into the message, I want you to imagine that, picture someone. Who is someone that you haven't seen for a while, but that you would love to see and would love to have a visit from? Okay? Who would you love to have a visit from? Love to have someone come and just hang out with you, be with you, whatever, say a week vacation. For me, that would be my mom. So my mom passed away about 8 years ago, but that would be the person, if I got to pick someone who would come and visit me, it would be my mom. So who would you pick that would come and visit you? And if you want to, you can write it in the comments, share with us who you would love to have come and visit with you. So if you imagine that person, picture them in their head, now guess what? I've got news for you. They're coming. All right? They're coming. They're going to be here in just a little while. So, what do you need to do to get ready? What would you do to get ready for their visit? All right, so for me, I would probably get the house cleaned and maybe whatever room my mom was going to stay in, I would get that bedding cleaned up. I would, go shopping. I would probably plan maybe we used to go antique shopping to different places, so maybe I would track down some antique places to plan for. We would plan, my mom's family's up north, so we would plan some trips up north so she could see her family. And so that's what I would do if I was having my mom visit. My husband, I'm not sure who he would pick, but I'm pretty sure whoever it is would be someone he would hunt with. So his planning would be totally different. And getting either the boat ready for bow fishing, or if there was deer hunting or whatever, like get all those things ready. So what about you? Who are you going to have come visit? Who would you love and be blessed by that? And what would you do to prepare? All right? Now, what happens when they don't come when you're expecting them to? And maybe even a time has passed, you're like, oh, surely they would be here by now, and they're not. How would that affect, how would that affect your preparation? How would that affect maybe your focus? How would that affect your attitude? And maybe if it went on and on that you still had not had the visit from this person that you were so excited to see, how would it affect maybe your hope? Like you may maybe give up on them even showing up, right? Well, in James, that's who we're studying the last several weeks. We've got one more week, but the book of James, if you want to turn there, it's towards the end of the New Testament. It's a very small book, but he is speaking to people who are kind of in that situation. Like in James's time, they were expecting Jesus to come back, like any moment, like Jesus is coming back any moment, and they were absolutely expecting that and eagerly awaiting it. But after months, after years of them waiting for him to come back and he didn't, the people started to respond like we would if our visitor wasn't arriving when we wanted them to. Maybe they were getting just distracted by the things of life and busy by things going on, perhaps distracted by sin that had crept into their life. Maybe they were just frustrated with the situation. Especially many of them were really undergoing intense suffering. And so that's the situation and the people, the circumstances that James is speaking into for our passage for today. So in the book of James, chapter 5, if you want to flip to chapter 5, James is only a few pages long, so I'm going to read to you verses 7 through 12. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. He's saying, Jesus is close. Jesus is near. Brothers and sisters, this is verse 10. As an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. And then verse 12. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, this is a bunch of like kind of random directions and thoughts and things crammed together under one subtitle here in the Bible. And I'm going to we're going to just pull this apart a little bit, and I'll kind of bring everything together, how you can see things are related. Okay, so don't be discouraged or frustrated if you're like, this is just a bunch of random thoughts. So what we have is James is speaking to believers, right? He's speaking to believers. He's speaking to people who have given their life to Christ. So if you are a believer, if you are a Christ follower, these are words that he would speak to people just like you and me. So James sees what they're going through. He sees what they're going through there. The people at the time, they were going through persecution. They were being exploited. They were suffering, not just physically possibly suffering, but also say financially and in other ways. And suffering because of their faith. Suffering for their faith. So a little bit of different circumstances, but I just want you to understand, like, this is the situation that James is speaking to. But he sees that, and he also understands the temptations that any believer is likely to experience. And so he wants to speak truth to them. He wants to speak life to them. He wants to help them. He wants to encourage them. He wants to warn them too. And most of all, he wants to give them hope. He wants to give them hope. These are people that he cares about. He cares about their faith, and he wants to give them hope at this time. So verse 7, like his biggest message is, be patient because the Lord is coming soon. Be patient because the Lord is coming soon. And he's like, you got to get through this. Jesus is coming. You're going to get through this. Jesus is coming. And when he says, be patient, he's not talking about let me just wait it out kind of patience. Let me just huddle down in the storm and I'll come out when the sun shines. He's not talking about, let's just sit around and twiddle our thumbs until we see Jesus bring us into the air. That's not what he's talking about. So verse 7, he says be patient, but then he gives us this example of the farmers, right? And so farmers, I'm not a farmer. I don't know if you're a farmer, but if you can imagine, a farmer does not plant seeds, then sit around twiddling their thumbs until perhaps something grows and they're able to pick it and harvest it. That's not what happens. That is not real life. What happens is they plant that seed and they work, right? They work tirelessly every day. They are preparing. They're busy. They are anticipating eagerly the harvest that's going to come. And so they're working and preparing for all the things that are involved in that. But they don't just sit. Their patience is not just sitting and waiting, calmly twiddling their thumbs. That's not what it looks like. So what he said, when he talks about being patient, it's not a passive patience. It is an active patience. It is a work while you're waiting kind of patience. And if you think, okay, so I'm not a farmer, but that's just an example for you to look at. He's speaking to believers. So our work, it's kingdom work. So it is kingdom work while you're waiting. It is, so what is kingdom work? Maybe we need to clarify that. Kingdom work would be, so for any believer, these are the things that are our priorities. And so that's loving God, serving God, worshiping God. That is part of our kingdom work. Part of our kingdom work is taking care of other believers. That is also kingdom work. Kingdom work is proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ. That is, so our words, our actions, our stories, they are talking about at times and as appropriate how Jesus has changed our life, how Jesus has transformed us, how sharing your testimony of just what Jesus has done in your life. and us sharing in various ways and through various relationships that Jesus Christ is the answer, that he is our salvation, he is our Redeemer, he is the only way. And so that telling others about Jesus is another side of kingdom work. So that is us. That's our work. That's our jobs. And that looks different for all of us because we're all in different places and spaces that God has placed us. But that is our kingdom work that we're supposed to be doing while we're patiently waiting for the Lord to come back. So Jesus is coming back anytime, right? That's what the Bible teaches us, that he is coming back anytime. And what he's going to do, what that means for us, is that he's going to right wrongs. That means that he is going to punish and he's going to judge the wicked. That's part of him coming back. He's also going to reward and rescue believers, his people. He's going to, for any Christ follower, he's going to eliminate all of our troubles. He's going to eliminate all of our suffering. All right? And we're not going to need patience anymore. We won't need patience anymore because he's going to make everything right. So those are the things that we can expect, that we're anticipating for Jesus coming back to earth, like he has promised he's going to do and like he is going to do. We're just waiting for it. So that's what it means. But in that time that we're waiting, we're not idle. We can't be idle. We can't. There's too much at stake. There's too much kingdom work to be done. So we are called to live the life that he has called us to, for each of us individually, wherever he has you. And he's called us to live like he expects us to. He calls us to live in a certain way. Like we learn about that as we read in the Bible or listen to teachings and that kind of stuff. So we're supposed to live the life he's given us, and we're supposed to live it in the way that he's told us to. And we need to recognize that the same kind of patience, like that the farmers have to be work. They're like, he's just using as an example. Sorry, I'm not clarifying myself very well. He's using them an example of like working and being busy and preparing and that kind of stuff, and that applies to us too. But there's also this level of like just regular patience that we normally think of patience. So that is also involved in the farmer. It's also involved in us too. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So anyway, the Lord is coming, and he's coming soon. So verse 8 says, be patient. Verse 8 says, stand firm. Verse 8 says, be courageous. And do all those things through the trouble that you are facing right now. Through those troubles. And remember, like for them, that the troubles were persecution. They were undergoing intense persecution, and they were suffering in different ways, and they were being exploited, especially say like the poor or believers or poor people. And so their struggles may be different than most of what we experience, but we are by no means free of trouble, right? So I think we should consider what are the troubles that we experience in our lives, that you may be experiencing in your life right now, that requires this kind of patience that James is talking about. So perhaps you are recovering from some type of illness or some type of injury, and that recovery is just taking so very long. That's going to require godly patience. Maybe you are like our example at the very beginning. Maybe you're waiting to see somebody that you just really love, and maybe because of COVID or just distance or whatever, you haven't been able to see them, and that's just bearing on your heart and a burden because you so desire. That's going to require godly patience. Maybe you're graduating, and perhaps by the time you see this, you already have, but maybe COVID's kind of stomped on all the great graduation plans that you have and the things that you were expecting and wanting, and there's like, that's your struggle right now. Maybe you're trying to find a job and you're desperate to be able to take care of yourself, and maybe if you have a family and those kind of things. Some people are feeling, whether they're working at home or elsewhere, they feel overworked and they're exhausted, they're stressed out, And really what they just need and want to and looking forward to is a break, is just some relentlessment and maybe even a vacation. Some people are they're waiting for their furlough to end, and they're just anxious to be able to get back and make the money that they were before. And so they're trying to be patient as this COVID thing kind of plays out and how it works with maybe their employer. And maybe that's the trouble and the struggle that you're experiencing right now. I know some parents, I'm not saying it's me, I'm not saying it's not. Some parents are anxiously waiting for their kids to get back to school. So you guys hang in there, godly patience for a few more months, because we're right around the corner from summer, and then fall will be shortly thereafter. But a lot of people, though, kidding aside, their struggle is relationship struggles, and it could be with a friend, it could be with a family member, it could be with a spouse, perhaps a tense relationship at work. So sometimes the burden and the hurts of a relationship is where you are requiring godly patience right now. Some I know a couple pregnant women, and I remember when I was pregnant, like those few months that you were waiting to hear babies cry and see them chubby cheeks felt like so long. Now that's a good burden to have, I think, but at the same time it can be hard too. Like it just can be like on your heart, struggling, or maybe it's more than that. Maybe the desire for pregnancy and it's an infertility issue or something like that. That's just what you are suffering with right now. Others are suffering loss of dreams, loss of someone that they love. There's so much suffering that we have in our lives, and as many people as there are watching this, that's as many troubles as we may encounter. That's just part of life. So for you, what is your struggle today? And you don't have to put it in the comments. You are welcome to. If you are watching this live or later, more people watch it after you. So if you do that, we will be praying for you, I promise. And but you don't have to. But just consider, what is your struggle right now? Where are you hurting? Where is the burden? What is the trouble in your life? And my question then, relating to this passage, is: do you need some help? Do you need some encouragement? Perhaps are you open to hearing some warnings, because James has that for us? And do you need some hope? Are you ready? Do you need some hope? When hope is instilled in our hearts, it really can change the trajectory of where we're going and how we're going to get there. But hope is so important, and when you're hurting, especially hope. So do you need some hope in the situation that you're in right now? Well, James' message today is all of those things. And he says, be patient, because Jesus is coming back. He says, be patient, and hope is on the way. And so that is a message too for us today. Be patient, hope is on the way. Now, James, the insightful and wise fellow that he is, he knows and he recognizes that perhaps just saying be patient and stand firm is maybe great advice and godly advice, but sometimes it's not quite enough. And so thankfully he gives us a little bit more. And he knows as humans that we have a natural tendency to fall into certain sin, that we have a tendency, that we just have common pitfalls that we may stumble over as we're going through life, especially when we are under pressure, especially then. And so there's more, of course, that we could brainstorm, but he addresses, I think, four of them in this passage. And even though we may not be in the same situation as the people that he was speaking to, I am pretty sure that at least some of them, at least a couple of them, will resonate speak to us too. So, verse 9, what does he warn us against? Grumbling. Don't criticize other believers. Don't do that. And it's part of what that does is it's destroying the unity of the body of God. It destroys the unity of the church. And that's easy to see, right? When it's obvious. I am so very thankful that our church, we don't have grumbling and criticizing and complaining. And I know so many pastors who that is a huge and a hard burden that they carry and that they deal with. And so I'm so thankful for our church that is so loving and so kind, and we don't have this kind of issue. But we still need to be careful, right? We still need to be careful for in our church, in our homes, in our work sites, that this can pop up. So, and the other thing that I think we need to be careful of is, I think a lot of people who complain and maybe grumble or criticize, they aren't, it kind of becomes an unintentional habit. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's somebody I know that it just seems like a guarantee if they step into, the place or room or whatever, that they are complaining. And sometimes it seems lighthearted, but it just seems like if that's what is just a given, that they're how they're going to speak, it's very and I've come to understand that the person doesn't recognize that they're doing it. They don't recognize the impact that it has on other people, and they're not trying to be undermining or negative or just being that person. They don't see it. It's unintentional. So we need to be careful about even our careless words and our careless speech, because it still has that same impact. It still has that destruction to the unity of the church. So we need to be careful. All right. The other thing, so verse 10, he says, he talks about questioning, why you're going through trouble. And not that you can't ask God why, I'm not saying that, but perhaps maybe they're wondering more like, did I make the wrong choice to follow Jesus? Because look at what I'm going through because of that. Was it just a wrong decision that I've made? If maybe they're asking, like, if I'm living a life that I think is pleasing to God, like, then shouldn't it be easier? And I think that's a question many of us have asked and wondered. And what James says is, hey, remember the Old Testament prophets? And perhaps, I don't know how much you know of the Bible or not, but for many people nowadays, like, maybe you can't even name one Old Testament prophet. But to the people he was speaking to, they probably could name all the Old Testament prophets. And so for him to remind them of that was significant. But basically he's saying, there's these people that God specially chose to be his spokesperson to the entire nation. Like, what a job that is, and a responsible and important person that is. But James is like, they still suffered. They were still hated at times. They were still ignored. They were persecuted. They were attacked. Sometimes they died because of their faith and because of them being obedient to God. So James is saying, even if these people who God specially chose for this super special and important task, if even they suffered, who are we to say, well, I shouldn't suffer, which is hard. Like, we don't like that. We so don't like that. But that's just the way it is. Especially on this side of heaven, that's the way it is, that we can just expect that there's going to be suffering. And being a Christian doesn't exclude us from that. So he's saying to them, you don't need to question your faith just because you're going through some trouble. All right. And I read that one of the commentators, he said this, which I thought was pretty cool. He said, God does not preserve his people from suffering. Rather, he preserves them in their suffering. So he can be saying that to you. I'll say that to you, my friend. God does not preserve you from suffering, but rather he promises to preserve you in your suffering. So let's take that for the encouragement that it is. So verse 11, James continues and he says, don't give up. He says, persevere. He says, stand firm in your suffering. Stand firm in your suffering. And he says, remember Job. So again, another Old Testament person that maybe you have or haven't heard of, but basically Job was this super righteous, godly man many, many thousands of years ago. And he was very richly blessed. So he had kids and family and livestock and property. So in that day and age, he was very, very rich and very, very blessed by God. And the quick story is that God allowed Satan to affect every part of his life. So first, everything he had was wiped out. Then everybody he loved was wiped out, except for his wife. But all his family, everyone he cared for. And then Satan was allowed to affect his body. So he had intense suffering and pain. And I just really can't imagine even being in one of those circumstances. But through it all, this is the incredible thing. Through it all, Job did not lose his faith in God. Through it all, he stayed faithful. Through it all, he never, ever knew why it happened. Never. And so for us too, we may not ever know. But through it all, he stayed faithful. And so for us too, we can look at the things that God asks us to do or the way he asks us to be. And honestly, it seems like God, that's impossible. Nobody can do that. And so James here is giving us these examples of yeah, you know what? It is possible. It is possible because people have done it before you. So be encouraged by their faith and know that God is with you too in the same way. But again, you may not ever know why you're going through what you're going through. Sometimes there are no answers. For some hugely deep trauma, there's a lot of things we don't ever have an answer for on this side of heaven. Some things we do. Some things we created ourselves. But it's especially difficult when we don't have an answer why, and we're not guaranteed an answer why. But even if you don't know, don't give up. God loved Job deeply. He allowed those things to happen to him for a greater purpose than we don't know or understand. But God loved him deeply, and God loves you deeply. God delivered Job, and he rewarded him for his faithfulness. And the same way for us, for me and for you. God will deliver you, and he will reward you for your faithfulness. And that is good news. So if you remember Psalm 66 that we read at the very beginning, that is a reminder that he will sustain us with his love and his mercy. When we are in a place of a good place that we praise him, he will sustain us with his love and his mercy when we are in horrible situations that we don't understand. James has described, we read, whoever that psalmist was, what he was going through. God will sustain us with his love and his mercy. So we have those promises, and through it all, to be faithful, to trust in him, to still praise him. So anyway, so James gives us these reminders to watch out. The warnings, really. Watch out for grumbling. Watch out for the kind of questioning and the wondering that you're doing because of what you're going through. Be careful not to give up. Just don't be this is not worth it. This is, I shouldn't have to do this. Don't give up. And then the last warning that he gives is to be honest. That's from verse 12. Be honest. He says, take your commitment seriously. He says, don't say things that sound like they're truth, but that you don't have any intention of following through with. So he's warning against that. And Jesus said, something similar too in the Gospels, but and the way this is worded, I think, you probably agree, like, that the way it's worded, that verse 12 is kind of a little difficult, but really what he's saying is Christ followers, they should have so much integrity that you shouldn't need to take an oath to mean it, right? So he's just saying, like, what you say should be truthful and it should be honest, and it should, period, like, that's it. No oath needed is what he's saying. So I think in hard times that we can be tempted to fudge the truth, perhaps, to ease our burden if we can, to make things a little bit better if we can. And so we need to be careful to not compromise our integrity in the way that we are relating to people and making promises and that kind of thing. So not okay is what James is saying. Well, like I said before, I don't know what your struggle is. I don't know what your struggle is. I don't know what kind of trouble you have in your life right now. I don't know what kind of hardships you have right now today in your life. I don't know what you're going to be going through this year or what life is going to be bringing your way. I don't know any of that. But I know this. I know that God loves you. I know that he sees you and he sees what you're going through. And I know that he does not enjoy watching you suffer. He doesn't enjoy your frustration. He doesn't enjoy your tears. He doesn't enjoy your heartbreak. He does not enjoy watching you suffer. James tells us to, in all of that, to be patient because hope is coming soon. Hope is coming soon. So while we're being patient, that we should, while we're being patient, we should wait on God's timing and trust in his timing. While we're being patient, we should expectantly wait for God to fulfill his promises. While we're being patient, how it looks is that we should, James says, be gracious to one another, especially other believers, that we should watch how we're talking to them, that we should be people of our word. He says that we should endure our troubles while we're staying true to the Lord. James says we can't give up. We can't give up because, but instead of giving up, we need to trust. We need to trust God that he's going to make everything right. He's going to make everything right in the end. It might not happen right now today. It might not happen when you finish your prayer. It might not happen even in the time that it might not even happen while you're on earth. But he does promise us that he will make things right in the end. So be patient because Jesus is coming soon. Be patient because hope is on the way. Hope is on the way. If you have Jesus in your life, if you have already invited him to be part of your life, if you have already received that forgiveness that he offers from the cross, then you know that the hope that he offers is more than just in eternity and him coming back for the second coming. It's more than that. So you know that his spirit is inside of you and he brings hope for every single day. He brings hope for every single day, no matter what you're facing. There's nothing beyond him. There's nothing beyond what Jesus can speak into, his spirit and you can speak into. Nothing is beyond that. So you have that kind of hope every single day, not just as we look forward to the second coming. And if that is not you, if you have not experienced that from yourself, if you are ready to make a decision for Jesus, or if you have questions that you would like answer, just kind of exploring what does this really mean, then I encourage you to, I made on our website, and it's an online communication card. So if you go to our website, it's www.newharvestfamily.org. And if you just click on the tab that says online communication card, there's a place that you can just fill in like, I want to make a decision for Jesus Christ, or I want more information about this. And there's a place, that's blank too, that you can just fill in whatever it is that you would like to share. So newharvestfamily.org online communication card. All right, so that's there for you. I hope that you use it, and know that I will respond to anything that you take the time to fill that out for. So James says in verse 7 that we are to, like a farmer, be patient. And like a farmer, just to remind you, you can't hurry that crop. You can't make it ripen. You can't rush it. And in the same way, we aren't able to rush Jesus coming back. In fact, we have no knowledge, and we're not intended to have any knowledge of when he's coming back. And anybody that tries to figure that out or claims it needs to read the Bible a little bit more, because if Jesus doesn't even know, then we have no business knowing either, and we don't know. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. I'm sorry. But we know, even though we can't rush it and we don't know when it's going to happen, we know that he is coming back, that it's a promise that it's going to happen anytime. It could be today, it could be next week, it could be next year. We don't know. We just know that it is true. And when he comes, he's going to gather up all of his believers, all the people that call him Lord, and draw us to him. And at the same time, he's going to end our suffering. He's going to end our troubles. He's going to rescue us. He's going to right every single wrong that has ever been done against you or done against somebody that you love. He's going to right all those. Those are promises that he has to his believers, his people, those that call him Lord. But until then, we need to cling tightly to his promises of love and mercy. We need to cling to those. We need to trust in his goodness. We need to live out our faith the way James has been describing in the many chapters that we've already studied. We need to live out our faith. We need to do the kingdom work that he has assigned to us. We need to do these things in a way that pleases God. And in that, we must be patient. We must stand firm. We must be courageous, because he promises that Jesus is coming soon, and he promises that hope is on the way. This morning, my hope is that you have been challenged. My hope is that you have been encouraged, and not just specifically by this word from James, but also just by God. I pray that you've been encouraged and challenged. And but I don't want to leave it at that. I would really like us to just, before we finish, to get super practical. So if you would just consider, like, what is the trouble that is in your midst? What are you struggling with right now? What do you need to do different? In light of what we have learned today, what we have read, what do you need to do differently? I'm wondering, is there a sin that you need to confess? I'm wondering, is there some stinking thinking that you need to just give to God? Perhaps there's an attitude that needs to be adjusted. We all need that sometimes, right? Maybe you need to refocus on kingdom work. Maybe you need to refocus on kingdom work. And if that is true, answer me this too, or think to yourself, specifically, what does that look like for you? If you're going to say, I need to refocus on kingdom work, what does that mean to you? What does that look like to you? It's important that we actually are thinking these things through, because sometimes the random, big overview ideas that we have, if we don't make them concrete and very specific, then they just fall away. So that's why I'm asking you these questions, Knowing that Jesus is coming back, knowing this, it should give us hope. But at the same time, knowing this should also convict us, and it should encourage us to make sure that we are prepared for his return, right? So I think at least I know I am so guilty of this. So I lose sight of that. I, go about my life, and I just, there be maybe times or teachings or places that I'm in the Word or some other reminder, whatever, that he's coming back, but I get so used to comfortable in my life that I don't think about it that much. I don't anticipate heaven as much as I should. But so maybe you feel the same way, so maybe you can relate to that. But I think at least at some point all of us lose sight of the fact that Jesus is coming back, and it could be any time. We just get distracted. Maybe we lose the urgency that we may have at times, but then we lose that urgency. We stumble into the pitfalls that James has just been describing, and probably many, many others. And so it's important for us to refocus and to kind of realign ourselves with what God says is true. So that's what we're doing today. So today, be thinking about those things, and I would like to know what is one thing that you can do today, do this week, to kind of realign yourself with what James is talking about, that we need to be patient. How does that look for you? Or we need to be prepared for the Lord to return. What does that look for you? So like being very specific of how God is applying this message to your life and to your heart. And so if you want to write that into the comments, if you are so bold and courageous and be vulnerable to write that in the comments, that's awesome. If you won't do that, what I would love for you to do is to go on to the website like I described before, newharvestfamily.org. Click on the online communication card and just click the other and write, what is your decision for today? How are you going to respond to what God is saying? And so if you would do that, I would appreciate it. And I think that there is value in speaking out. There is value in sharing a decision. I think it makes it more real. It makes it more powerful. There's a little bit of a level of accountability. And in addition to that, so if you respond either in comments, other people can also be praying for you. But if you just fill out that online card, I will receive that. I will be praying for you this week. So there's that of speaking it out or writing it out. In this case, there's this level of making it real, and also the value of being prayed for and being a little bit more accountable. So that is why I would love for you to share your decision for today. How are you going to respond? Listen, if you have prayer requests, you can also go on that same place, newharvestfamily.org, click on the online communication card, and there's also a place for you to write a prayer request. And if you do that, I would be honored to just share in agreeing with you whatever it is that you would like prayer for. So please know that that is also an option that I would be honored to help out with. So online communication card, that is available. And prayer requests, responding to this. If you have some other response that God is putting on your heart for today, please share that. I would love to kind of partner with you with whatever that decision is. And that is all for our message. So can we just pray? Can I pray over you for God to do his work right now? So if you'll bow your heads, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for your word. I thank you for the Bible that you give to us, that you speak to us through. And sometimes we need a wake-up call. Sometimes we need a stern word. Sometimes what we need is just a word of love and encouragement. Sometimes we need reminders. God, you know our hearts. You know what we need. And God, you are speaking today. So I just pray that all of us would open up our hearts, our minds to hear from you, that you would settle your word into our hearts, that you would help us to make a decision that is, kind of it's helping you transform us. We have a part in your work in us. And so as we agree to obey you, then you do that spirit miraculous work in us. And we just ask for that. We want you to speak and we want to obey you. And I just pray that when your word settles in our heart and our reaction is resentment or some negative response, God, I just pray that even in those times when we're not really so eager to respond to you and obey you, God, I pray even in those times that you would just soften our hearts, that you would continue to woo us, that you would continue to speak your love and grace over us, that you would help us to understand that whatever you are calling us to obey, it's because it's better for us, it's better for the kingdom, and it's just good. So God, I pray that you would do your work right now through everyone who is hearing. And I pray that you would just bless us as we are walking through this continued COVID situation and as we're learning how to move forward. God, I pray for wisdom. I pray for leaders of all kinds that you would give wisdom and how we're going to do that. I pray that for those who are affected by the COVID crisis, whether that is in a health-wise, that is financially, that is relationally, emotionally, like there's so many ways that people have been negatively impacted by the COVID crisis. God, I just pray that you would minister to them, God, that in whatever way that you know that they need it. God, I pray too that you would open up our eyes to the good things, the wonderful things that you have brought through this crisis. And I've seen personally, our church has seen some really great things that you have done, even in the midst of the trouble that we have in this world. And so I thank you for those, and I pray that you would continue to surprise us and delight us and show us those things. Well, God, we love you, we praise you, and we pray all the things that we say and do this week will give you honor and glorify you. So we love you, and amen.